Okay, cool. Let's all run our app. Let's all run our app and make sure we in the state, at least we have some items to sell, correct? Yes? And here I was able to get 2 users in my feed. I have 2 users here in my feed. So yesterday we were able to get multiple users showing up in our feed. Objective for today, this morning, will be to get our zip file going because that was a to-do yesterday. So we'll get a zip file going first thing. After that, we'll go over to the profile view so that we could change our profile image. We'll go to the profile view so we could change our profile image. So that will take us into Firebase storage. Everybody with me? So first we'll take care of the custom cell. Then we'll go over to our profile view controller and get started with Firebase storage. Firebase storage will enable us to save a photo on our Firebase, okay? Save a photo, get a URL for that photo. That way we could reload the photo at any point in our app. So far so good? For both. We'll be doing 2 photos. And wherever we stop at 12:30, we'll continue and finish tomorrow, okay? Okay, cool. So let's get started here. In our view section, let's create an item cell and an item zip. So in our view section, in our views folder, let's right click, create a new file. Empty view, user interface, empty view. We'll create the zip file first. User interface, empty view, yes? And we said item cell. And secondly, we'll create a subclass of UI table view cell. So subclass, CocoaTouch class, subclass of UI table view cell, and we're calling it item cell. Subclass of UI table view cell. Okay. Item cell. So we have an item cell that's Swift, and we have an item cell that's zip. Let's go over to our zip. In my zip file, my canvas is empty. I'll go to my object library and search for a table view cell. Search for a table view cell. I'll change the height in the height inspector. Actually, 140 is fine. Oh, that just happened. I gotta play lottery today. So. Okay, so 140 is good. Let's go ahead and start adding elements to it. So first, we'll get an image. First, we'll get an image view. We'll get an image view. We'll constrain the image view first here. Let's go ahead and constrain the image view. So I'll make it 20 to the top, 20 to lead in, 20 bottom. 3 constraints, 20 top, 20 lead in, 20 bottom. And then I'm going to go ahead and control drag the image to itself, control drag the image to itself, control drag the image to itself, and I'm selecting aspect ratio. Aspect ratio, and I'm going over to aspect ratio in the item size inspector. And I'm changing the multiplier 1 to 1. So our image view again, constraint 20 top, 20 lead in, 20 bottom. The width is the same as the height, so we're using aspect ratio for that. We could give it a placeholder photo, image, I'll just say photo or tag. We'll give it a background color for now, orange. We'll say aspect fill for the image. We'll change the image class type to designable image view. We'll change the images class to designable image view. And we'll make the corner radius, say, 8 for now. And we'll take a look at how it looks, and we'll adjust it. Cool, so we have our image view. Next up, let's go add a label for the image name or the item name. So a label for the item name, drag a label over. This will be item name. We'll option drag the next label for the price. We'll make the background color on this one system orange. We'll option drag a next label, option drag. This label is going to be the seller name. And our last label will be, our last label will be the date. Cool. So let's set the constraints for those. The constraints for my item name, let's go set that up. We'll say 20 to the top. We'll say 8 to the lead-in, and we'll say 8 to trailing. So those are 3 constraints for my label. For the seller name, let's go ahead and set the constraints for this. 8 top, 8 lead-in, 8 trailing. And lastly, the date. Actually, not lastly, the date, but date is going to be 8 top, 8 trailing, or 8 lead-in, sorry, and 8 trailing as well. And lastly, we have the price. The price will constrain, let's see, we'll just put it to the bottom, the lower bottom. We'll say 8 to the bottom and 8 to the lead-in, or to the trailing, sorry. 8 trailing, 8 bottom. For the price, let's change the label color. I'll go with system background color, and I will make it bold, or make it, let's see, system font headline for the label. For the item name, we could make it slightly bigger. So the item name, the font, we'll make the font for the item name, what does title 2 look like? Title 2 or title 3? What's title 3? No, title 1. Okay, title 1 is fine. And number of lines, we'll say make it 2. And for the date, we'll make it slightly smaller. Maybe caption 2. Caption 2 is a bit too small. Caption 1. Caption 1 is fine. We'll come back and adjust whatever we need to adjust here. So here we have an image view. We have 4 labels. We have a label for the item name, a label for the seller name, a label for the date, and a label for the price. Okay. Now let's go, actually, let's see. Option click on this item cell. Option click on item cell. Option click on item cell. We also want to change the cell class. So click on your table view cell in the documents outline here. Click on the table view cell. We want to go ahead and change the cell to our item cell. We also want to give it an identifier. So click on the attributes inspector and item cell. So we changed the class to item cell, and we made the reuse identifier item cell, right?
Just like copy and paste,
Yeah. Next, let's just get some more space here so we could see everything that's going on here. Make this bigger, bigger. Okay, cool. So we don't need any of that code here. We could take all that out in the cell. So we have our item cell. And now we could control drag over to our item cell. So we have our image, we'll control drag over. If you cannot control drag, that means you need to go ahead and set up your class name correctly. Yes, sir.
Don't we already have an item cell?
We have an item cell from the storyboard, correct?
Yeah, I think in our.
We have to go ahead and adjust that, right? We have to remove that. We'll actually just go ahead and delete the cell from the storyboard. Cool, and we'll be using that nib.
Okay.
Yeah, very good. So control drag from the image view. I'll just select UI image view here, and I'll call this item image view. Item image view, next up we have the labels. So control drag from my item label, and this we'll just call item name label. Next we have seller name. Call it seller name, it's fine. Seller name label. And lastly, we have price, no, date. I'm running ahead of myself here. Control drag from date. We'll say date label. And lastly, we have price. Control drag. And we'll say price label. Cool. While we're here, we'll write a private function, not private, public function, called configure cell for item. It takes in an item. It takes in an item. We could set up our item name label. So item name label dot text equal to item name. Next we have seller label dot text equal to @symbol. Can you see now? Item dot seller name. Next we have date. We'll say date label dot text equal to item dot listed date dot description, and we have price. With the price, we'll do something very similar to what we did yesterday. We'll first get the price as a string formatted price. Format. And here we're using a format %.2f, meaning 2 decimal places. And we pass in the argument as item price or price. And we'll set the price to the price label. So here we have price label dot text equal to $, string interpolation, price. Let me close the nib because we don't need this anymore. And to do, we'll set up the image later. To do, set up image, import, install, Fisher, via pod. And like that, Michael Bloomberg is out. Hmm?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, they did not.
After spending more than $500 million.
$750 million. I mean,
It's amazing. What, 3 months? That's nothing.
Well, you understand that money could like.
Right?
yep.
Still like.
Can't what? Can't override a strong property. What are you trying to override exactly? Reconnected, disconnected and reconnected. How we doing? Are we good with the cell? Yes? Okay. Yes? All right, cool. Let us now go over, because Mr. Kelby said we have multiple cells here, which we do. Let's go to our main view storyboard. Let's go over to our main view storyboard. Everybody in the main view storyboard? Do we have access to our table view, our first tab, our item feed? Yes, everybody? Yes. Okay, cool. So let's do a couple of things here. I should just be able to delete this. Just delete this, click on the cell, and delete the cell. Click on the cell and delete the cell. Now let's go back to our item feed view controller. We need to register our nib in our viewDid load here. Access your viewDid load. I'm inside of the item feed view controller, and we're in the viewDid load. We're about to register a nib file or zip file. We start off with the table view property, and we say register. We're looking for register nib, not register class, but register nib. We enter register nib. We type in UI nib, open parens. We go down to not data, but nib name. For nib name, we pass in item cell. Bundle nil, reuse identifier is item cell. So here we've registered our custom zib item cell class. Okay. Awesome. Next, let's go down to our cell for row. If it's lowercase here, you put for the reuse identifier, please have a lowercase. If it's uppercase, make sure it's uppercase here. Let's go down to our cell for row and update our cell for row to accept a custom cell. We'll do that by using a guard statement right before our let. Then we'll say as question mark. We'll typecast it to an item cell. We'll use an else because this is a guard statement. In our else block, we'll have a fatal error. That's a developer error. Here we'll say could not downcast to item cell. So we have our cell. We'll remove that cell, that text label. We'll remove that price. We'll remove the detail. And we'll use our configure on our cell. So cell.configure, and we'll pass in the item. We'll build. We'll make sure we have no errors. And we'll run our app, see if we have any errors. Where is my app? Why don't you show up here? Come on, don't hide. Wow, that's a big cell. Okay. Let us go ahead and implement height for row. Do we all see our cells appearing? Aaron, double check Amini's computer. I see a nod here. Okay. Let's go ahead and implement. Do we have a delegate here? No. So let's go ahead and implement or extend our view controller. Extend our view controller because this is a bit too big. We could deal with this, but it's fine. Extend our view controller, so item cell, not item cell, item feed view controller. We want to go ahead and conform to table view delegate. And we want to implement height for row. I think what we started off was 140, so return 140 for height for row. So height for row, we return 140 here. And we need to set ourselves as a delegate in the view load. So in view load, you want to type in table view dot delegate equals self. So let's go set that up. In my view load, right after our data source, we'll say table view dot delegate equals self. We'll run it again and have a shorter cell. Right? That's better. So we should now see our fully implemented custom cell with our corner radius on our image view. We have the item name, we have the username, and we have the date, and we have the price label. Do we see all those components in our app? Anybody not see those components in the app? To the, I'm sorry?
The item cell.
The item cell.
I mean, that's what
Yeah, we return 140 and make sure you say table view delegate equals self in view load. Jahid, how you doing? Good? Cool. Excellent. That's all we have, the height for row and the delegate equals self. Cool? We all good? All good? Aaron, I think a mini, right? Okay, cool. So we have our zip going, we have our custom class going. Now let's go over to our profile view. If I take my app back up here, we'll go back to the profile view. Here's the things we're going to be doing. We want to be able to add a photo to this placeholder image. So first off, we'll add some button. Maybe we add like a pencil icon button. When you click on that pencil icon, it will bring up an action sheet. So if I'm using the simulator, I'll only see the photo library. If I have a device, I'll see the photo library and I'll see the camera, right? So when the user selects a photo, it's going to populate that placeholder image with that photo, okay? And when we say update profile, we'll write code to actually save that photo on Firebase. Everybody with me? So those are the steps we'll go through here. So when we implemented at minimum adding a photo to the placeholder image, we'll take a break there. Everybody with me? Cool? Yes? All right. So let's all go to profile view controller. Well, before we go to Profile View Controller, we should go to the Main View Storyboard. Let's go to the Main View Storyboard and access your Profile View here. Access your Profile View here, and let's go ahead and add in a button. So in my Profile View scene, I'm going to add a button. On my Profile View scene, I'll add a UI button. UI button. I'll drag a UI button over such that it's centered vertically here. I'm sorry? I'm on the Profile View scene. And I just dragged in a UI button. Okay, cool. Let's set the constraints for the button. Let's set the constraints for the button. So, keeping up with Apple's guidelines, the minimum size of our button will make it 44 by 44 points. So click on your width, change it to 44. We could make it bigger, but we're not going to make it smaller. For the height, we'll also make it 44 points. So those are two constraints, width and height. Next, I will control drag from my UI button over to my image, and I'll say center vertically. And it needs some spacing between the image view. So I'll click on my constraints, and I'll say 8 is the spacing between my image view and myself, or my button, right? So 8 is the last constraint we need there. Center vertically with the image view. So we have our button. We'll go to the attribute inspector for our button. Attribute inspector, we do not need the title button anymore. So remove the text that says button. Remove that. We'll go down to the background where it says background. Do we all see background? Do we all see background? Yes. We'll search for pencil. So pencil. And we'll select some pencil icon. Let's see what that one looks like. Okay, that's fine. We have a pencil icon. We could maybe change the theme color if we want. Keep up with the app theme, make it orange. Okay, that's good. Cool. So we have our button. Let's run our app, make sure we have our button showing up. We have our button, great, great, great. Next, we'll connect our button, and we'll have an action sheet being presented when the user clicks on that button. So let's open up the assistant editor. Make sure we have our profile view controller next to us. We have our profile view controller next to us, and we will drag an action right below our update profile button pressed. We'll drag an action here from our button item. So control drag over, and we'll change the type to say UI button, and we'll change the name to say edit. Yeah, edit profile photo is fine, or edit profile photo button pressed. Long name, but it's fine. Edit profile photo button pressed. What else we have to do in this profile view? We have access to the image view. Do we have an outlet to it? No, we don't. So let's get an outlet to the image view. So make sure we have an outlet. Actually, we have one. We have one. It's profile image view. So we have that. We could change our photo. We have a button. We can access that. Okay, cool. Great. So now we could just go back to our profile view controller. Profile view controller. And let's write some code in our edit photo button pressed. We need to present an action sheet. Let alert controller equal to UI alert controller. We'll have a title saying choose photo option, message nil, and it's an action sheet. Present alert controller true, completion nothing. Cool. Let's add our actions or create our actions. So we'll have a camera action of UI alert action. Title simply says camera. Style is default. Handler, we'll come back to the handler. So just put a nil for now. Next we'll have a photo, library, action, bless you, UI alert action. Title for this one is simply gonna be photo, library, style, default, action nil or handler nil. Next, we have a cancel action of type UI alert action. Title is cancel, style is cancel, handler nil. And let's add those actions to our alert controller. So add action, camera, action, alert controller, add action, photo, library action, and alert controller, add action, cancel action. The one we have to protect here is the camera. If we do not have a camera, we're not gonna add this. So if UI image picker controller dot is source available camera, if the camera is available, then we add the camera action. So on the simulator, the camera action is not going to show. But please, as you develop this app, use your device. We all should have cables, right? We got cables earlier. We all have cables. We still have the cables, right? The dongles, whatever we have, the adapter there. So feel free to test this app on your device, especially when creating items or changing your profile photo. Okay, cool. So we should be able to run this. Say that again? Okay, right before break we'll push. We'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll all be back up to par. So if I go to profile, I click on my button, I have my photo library showing up, right? And if you're on the device, you'll see both photo library and camera, correct? Right? So here I could cancel. Well, either one I press is just gonna cancel, but cancel, cancels. I'll push it right now. Working on, well, created custom cell for item VC. Push. Okay, so that's pushed. Did everybody get their action sheet showing up?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So let's move over to, let's see, we have this, we have this. Okay, let's go to the top of the file and add in a private var for our, yes, yes, Yulia? You were not able to finish type?
No, I finished connection.
Okay. So let's create a private var here. We'll call it image picker controller. Image picker controller. Let's just make it a lazy var here and set it up. Image picker controller is a UI image picker controller. Let image picker equal to UI image picker controller. Return image picker. Image picker dot delegate equal to self. We're in the profile view controller at the top. The image picker controller is the thing that takes us to our photo library or the camera, right? So at this point, we need to have an extension to conform to the UI image picker controller delegate and the UI navigation controller delegate. So we need to conform to two protocols here for our image picker controller code. Conforming to? Yeah, delegate and UI navigation controller delegate. Okay, so we'll go to the very bottom here, write an extension on our profile view controller. We conform into UI image picker controller delegate and UI navigation controller delegate. And we are implementing image picker image picker. We implemented image picker, did finish picking media info, right? That's when the user actually selected a photo. When the user selects a photo, we'll dismiss the image picker controller. We need to get access to the photo the user selected. We'll use a guard statement for that. It's optional. We'll say image equal to info is a dictionary. We're using the key to access to that, to get access to the image, we're using the key info.key.original image. Again, there's different images here. There's a cropped rect, there's edited image. We're accessing the original image. And we're casting it to a UI image here. So at this point, we have the image that the user selected. And we'll have a global variable to capture, or an instance variable to capture the image that the user selected. That instance variable will be called selected image, and we'll set our image to it. Cool, good? Can we scroll up? If you're done, scroll up, create a variable, selected image, and in the did set set the profile image view to that selected image. Okay, so we'll have a private var selected image of type UI image. It's an optional. In the did set, we will simply set our profile image view. Profile image view dot image equal to selected image. Okay, let's run our app. Run our app, I'm down here. Run our app, go to profile, click on our button, go to photo library. Where is my photo library? Did your photo library come up?
No, you didn't, like, that's not yourself.
Where am I?
The action sheet.
Oh, did I not bring up the photo library? Are we just like running ahead of ourselves? Okay, when I click on photo library, here, photo library action, we have nothing, okay? So we need to continue writing some more code here. The handler is nil, so nothing will happen. Let's update our handler. Our handler will take in an alert action. In that alert action, what do we want to do here? We want to say self.image picker controller source type equal to photo library. And we want to present our image picker and for people running on the device, we want to do something very similar. So in the camera action here, in the camera action, we'll have a handler. And this time around, the source type will be camera, source type camera. Our cancel doesn't need no completion. It just simply dismisses the view. And let's run again. Go to profile photo, click on our button, click on photo library. That shows up. Go to my images and select some photo here. And now I have my photo showing up. Were we able to get our photo populated in the placeholder image view? Okay, so we'll take a break here. Anybody who needs extra help will walk around, but we're coming back at 11:10. Okay, so we'll take a break here, and we'll come back at 11:10. Okay, so we're back. To verify, we just completed installing Firebase storage. So we edited our pod file, we added Firebase/storage, we went to terminal, and we ran pod install. That installs Firebase storage. Next, we'll navigate to our console in our browser. We'll navigate over to our project on Firebase. So go to your project, click on your Firebase demo project. Click on your project, navigate over to storage. Do we all see storage here in the left column? So we've gone through authentication, we've gone through database, now we're going through storage. So we'll click on storage. Welcome to storage. So do we all see getting started or get started with storage button? So click on that so we could enable storage. The rules here is pretty okay. It says allow read write if the user is authenticated, right? As opposed to with the database we had, it was basically either in locked mode with our database or it was in free to browse as much as you want, right? But here it's already saying, hey, only allow people to write to our storage if they're authenticated, meaning if they're logged into our app. Everybody with me? So we'll accept those and we'll say next. Yes? How do we? I'm not hearing. How do we differentiate? Yes, we could go with Firebase rules. We could really go as granular as we want, right? Firebase rules, there's documentation on it. If we might get to it today, maybe not. But there's a lot you could do with Firebase rules as to who writes to what, who has what access. For example, if you're creating an app where there's different administration roles or whatever, you could lock it down to say only managers, only people that are logged in as managers are allowed to see employee payroll, for example, right? You could do that with Firebase rules, okay?
Yes. The rules we just looked at on the previous screen, that was pulled from the rules we set up yesterday?
That was default rules for storage.
That's default?
Yeah.
I thought we changed it to this.
Yesterday we changed our database part to
That's
this.
just for database.
Yes.
Okay.
But storage works with authenticated not being nil by default.
Gotcha.
As opposed to, we had two options yesterday from database. We had one locked mode and the other one was true. Anybody could write
So
to
there's
it.
separate rule pages for
Yes, exactly. So each product has its own rules. Well, except authentication, right?
It just happened to match up.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, so it didn't import from yesterday. Cool. So here we'll just select your central and we'll say done. That's like the location where your Firebase is located. And the rule of thumb is the closer to you, the better. Creating default bucket. So to get started with storage, like we did with database, we first need to add it to our Excel project via pod install, Firebase storage in that case, and next we need to go to our Firebase console and put Firebase storage on. Everybody with me? And set the rules based on the logic you want. Okay, so while that's spinning up, is everybody's bucket created? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're done with the pod file. Again, to reiterate, we have authentication, we have database, and now we have storage. So let's go to our Firebase services. Go to the Firebase services folder, and we'll create a new file called storage service. So new file, Swift file, and we'll call it storage service. Storage service, we'll say create. And what are we importing here? We need to import Firebase storage. Cool. We'll write a function here. We'll call it update or upload photo.
We don't have
We don't have a class? Okay. Well, sorry, class storage service. Update photo. In our application, we'll have two places where we update a photo. One place we upload in a photo will be in our profile view, right? The user wants to change their photo. We'll upload that photo. And also when we create an item. Maybe we type that in. So in our app, we will be uploading a photo to storage in two places. First place is profile, view, controller, and the second place is create item, view, controller. Okay. We will be creating two different buckets or folders. One we'll be calling like user profile photos, and the second one we'll call it item photos or items. Item photos. Item photos implements one item. Items photos. Okay. Okay, so our signature will accept either a user ID, because the way we'll be saving those photos in storage, we'll be saving it in those buckets. So if it's a user photo, it will go under the user profile photos / whatever the user ID is. And if it's an item photo, we'll save it items photo / item ID. That way, if we have to manipulate that photo in any way, it's easy to do so. Everybody with me? Okay. Let's create a reference, like we did with the database, same thing. Let's create a reference to the Firebase storage. We'll have a private, what are we gonna call this? Let storage equal to storage. That gets us a reference to our storage, right? So we want to write to storage, we need a reference to our storage, right? Very similar to database. If I want to write to that storage in Firebase, I need to get a reference to it. Okay? So upload photo, let's set up our definition for our function. What does it take in? We'll say user ID is a string. It's optional because maybe it's not a user ID. Here we're going to use a default parameter because maybe it's not a user ID. Everybody with me? Right? So we say it's optional and it's set to nil. It could be a user ID or it could be an item ID. We're making that function generic for any type of photo. So that's why we're setting up our function definition to take either a user ID or item ID. Everybody with me? I mean, we could have probably created an enum as well to do that, right? With states. There's many ways to do it there, but that suffices. So upload a photo, user ID, item ID. We need an image, which is of type UI image. When I say equal to nil, that means the user do not have to pass in that user ID. If they don't pass in the user ID, it's automatically nil. Okay? When I say equal something, I'm saying the default to this value. That's default arguments or default parameters. Default parameters in Swift, right? Just take this. Example. Okay, so we have an image, we have what it's coming from, and next we'll have some sort of completion to return to whoever calls this function, because this is an asynchronous function. If it's an asynchronous function, either we use a delegate or we use some sort of completion handler to return the result. So here we're using a completion handler to return the result. What result are we returning? At the end of all this, we need a URL. So what happens, Firebase takes our image, we need to convert our image to data. We'll take that data and we'll pass it to a Firebase function, right? There's a lot of moving parts here that we need to do. So we get an image. In our case, we have a selected image from the user. We'll resize that selected image because we do not want to send a full-size image to Firebase, right? First of all, it's going to be too big in our storage, and before you know it, our storage is full, and also getting back that image and presenting it in a table view, it will be very laggy. Everybody with me? So we'll resize that image. First, resize the image, convert the image to data, because we cannot just say Firebase has an image or UI image. We have to convert the UI image to data. Then we pass the data over to the Firebase function, upload data. It uploads the data to Firebase. Very similar, think of upload data as when we post something. Remember our elements? We uploaded data, like a data object, or we posted data. Very similar here. So we upload data, then Firebase in the completion handler, we get back a download URL. That download URL is very, very important. That download URL will attach it to our Firebase storage, and we'll also attach that download URL to the user photo URL, right? Our user object has a photo URL, everybody, right? When I want to change my user object, when we looked at the first lab, the off lab, there's user.displayName, correct? There's also user.photo URL. Everybody remember that property there? So on the user.photo URL, I could save that URL I have on Firebase, or I got back from this particular function. And that URL will be associated with the user photo. Everybody with me? Okay? So, as I said, we'll get through it. We might not finish, that's fine. No need to rush this part here, because this part is very important. A lot of moving parts, but very, very important. Okay, so any questions so far? So in our result type here, result type, our success type is a URL or a string, and our failure is an error. To reiterate, on line 19, we need a reference to our storage. Before we write to storage, we need a reference to it. Very similar to our database. We created a private let called DB. DB was a reference to our database. Here, we write it to storage. We need to get a reference to the storage. Okay. As I said, steps, we'll go through the steps. I'll just put one here. Convert UI image to data. Because this is the object we are posting to Firebase storage. So let's convert that. So we have an image, we say guard, we'll call it image data, and image data on UI image, or on the image instance, sorry, it's called image.jpg. So the data conversion we'll be using on a JPEG image, and compression will take full compression. 1.0 is full compression, right? So keep it as high quality as possible. If you want to decrease the quality, which will also decrease the size or the depth of the image, you could go down to 0.5 and so on, right? So here we'll stick to 0 to 1.0, and we'll say else, return. So at this point we have image data. Okay. We need to establish which bucket or collection or folder we will be saving the photo to. So here we'll create a reference. That's fine. var photo reference. Photo reference is of type storage reference. And we'll determine the photo reference based on if user ID is not nil. One of those needs to be valid, right? Or one of those needs to have a value. Either, if I'm calling this function, from my profile view controller. In that case, it's going to be a user ID. Or I'm calling this from my create items view controller. In that case, I have an item ID. Everybody with me? Okay, cool. So let's continue on. So here I'll say if let, what am I gonna call this? User ID. Coming from profile view controller. Else if let item ID. Else we're coming from create item view controller. We're coming from either of those two places. Okay. If we're coming from a user or the user profile, we'll go ahead and set up our photo reference. Our photo reference object. One second, we need one more reference here. I should just probably do one more second. Let's just do storage ref here. Dot reference instead of redoing that. So update our storage reference to the full reference, not just the storage container, but the full reference. So storage reference here. Okay, so this is photo reference. What does photo reference get? Photo reference gets storage reference. So this is the top level reference of my storage container. I changed it to reference, not change it, but I added dot reference because I realized we still need the dot reference part of it, and we're not going to recreate that here. We'll just create a storage reference variable. So back in my storage reference, I say storage reference dot child. Let's stop here for a second. Storage reference dot child is basically an append. I'm taking the top folder, or think of our Finder. In my Finder, I have folders. In that top folder, I want to create a subfolder. If I want to create a subfolder, I say .child on a reference object. .child will create a child folder in that particular reference. Everybody with me? So here I'm saying .child. And that child, I could give it any path name. I could say images / like that. Right? But here, what did we say? We said we want to say user profile photos / user ID dot JPEG. Okay? So if I'm coming from my profile photo, I am writing a new user ID profile photo to my photo reference. So photo reference, this is going to be the full photo reference. It's going to be the top level storage, user profile photos / whatever the ID of that user is. Everybody with me? If it's the same user, it simply overwrites that photo, which makes sense. There's no reason to have many photos around. Everybody with me? But if it's a different user, say I start with one user, I'll have one user in that folder. I log out, I log in for different user, so forth, I'll have multiple profiles. Everybody with me? So when we're managing our photos, there's one place to manage it. And if we have to delete a user and we want to keep our house clean, we could also delete that photo from our storage with that ID. Everybody with me? If you don't have that ID, there's no way to know what photo it is. Okay? So as I said, IDs are very important. Anything you save in, try to associate an ID with it. That way you could delete it very easily with that same ID. Right? Okay, cool. So next up, we'll go to the second instance here. So basically, we're setting up our photo reference. It could either be coming from a user ID or coming from an item ID. So here we say storage reference.child, and we'll call this one items photos / string interpolation and item ID dot JPEG. Okay, doing good.
So these are being saved to storage,
Yeah, they'll be saved to storage, yeah.
and the buckets are similar.
The
to
buckets are similar to containers, so just different folders.
Is it the same system as collections and?
No, it's not the same system. So question was, is storage the same system as, it's similar in a sense, right? You'll have like a folder with the, photos in there, right? But there's no other like collection we'll put on top of that. But yes, you could say folder, folder JPEG and have a next folder there. Like you could have folders inside of it, but it's not the same collection document as the database is, right? This one is more like a finder sort of hierarchy, where I could have folders and also images inside of that same folder, right? Once we get to it, you'll see how it looks physically, but it's going to be a folder. We click on a folder called user profile photos. In there, we'll have multiple JPEG images. But in that, you could have a folder as well. Cool? Very good. So cool. So we have our folder reference. Next up, let's configure metadata for the configure metadata for the object being uploaded. What does that look like? We'll create a metadata object, metadata, which is part of Firebase. All this is part of Firebase. Storage metadata. So metadata is, think of metadata like a container where you could put different attributes for an object, right? So like a photo has metadata, for example. The metadata associated with a UI image is where did you take the photo, right? What's the density? What's like all the attributes of that photo? What is it? So in ours, the only one piece of metadata we're concerned about is what type of data are we sending up? Are we sending up an MP3 file? Are we sending up an image, right? So we'll let Firebase know what type of metadata or what type of data we send in to Firebase. So here we create a metadata instance, and we say metadata.content type. Remember content type from JSON, right? From when we post in, we want to tell our API what type of content is it. Is it HTML we're sending up, right? Is it JSON we're sending up? What type of content we're sending up, right? That content type is a min type. So we'll say we're sending up an image. So content type expects a string. And the string we'll pass in here, we'll say image/JPEG, right? So if we take a look at what we did, this is JPEG, we're sending up JPEG. If it's PNG, we're sending up PNG, but here we're sending up JPEG, okay? You can send up JPEG and PNG at the same time, right? One piece of data is associated with one content. Does that make sense, right? So here we're sending up a JPEG, we let Firebase know it's a JPEG, and when we actually go to our storage, we'll be able to see an image. If you don't specify what type of data it is, when you go to your container, you won't be able to see that image being populated in your storage container. Okay. Now we've set up everything. This is again very similar to like making a request with URL session, right? Or even local notifications. Remember local notifications? It's the same sort of setup, right? There's metadata involved, there's a request involved, and then when you're ready, you send up that piece of data that you're posting. So let's go ahead and access our Firebase function to actually send up that data object. So here we have our photo reference. This is what we'll be using. Photo reference, think of the photo reference like the request object. On that photo reference, we'll say, what is it? Put data, where is it? Here, put data. So put data is the function we're interested in. What does put data do? It synchronously uploads data to the currently specified reference, right? So basically what that says, based on the reference we created, either the reference is our storage container profile photos or it's item photos. One of those references. Everybody with me? One of those references, go ahead and upload some data object that I'll give you. That data object will give it, we created that data, we converted our UI image to data, right? We converted our UI image to data. So now let's go ahead and say put data with completion. Put data, so hard to see the differences here. Put data, not with URL. We want to put data with data. Okay, because that's what we have. Sorry, let me do this again. So put data with data, and do we have a completion on this? We need a completion on that. So put data with data. Here we're going to pass in our image data. We'll also pass in the metadata we created, and we'll have a completion which has metadata and an error. So metadata and error. So the completion we get back metadata from Firebase, like, hey, here's information for what happened. Think of the metadata like the response in our URL session. And like everything else, there's an error associated with it. Okay, we'll first check to see if there's an error. The metadata will have the download URL in it, okay? And any other information we need from that downloaded image. Yes, so that's the completion. Think of it like the response, where we have our data in URL session. So here we check for an error. Else, let metadata equal to metadata, which is also optional, build, else if let. Do we have a completion? We have a completion, right? So here, if we have an error, simply use the completion we have, and failure is error. So we handle the error case. else everything went well here. We'll say photo reference dot metadata, not metadata, photo reference dot download URL, URL, error. In the else block, in the success block, we want to investigate what that download URL is, right? So photo reference dot download URL, and if let error, same case here, error. Else we have else if let URL equal to URL. Completion, we have an error here, return error. We could do an enum here because we have multiple errors, like what actually happened. We'll get valid errors, that's fine. And lastly, completion, success. Success, we have a URL. We're not using this, we could just comment this out, not comment, but underscore here. Let me go through this again. All right, so the main function we have on Firebase, with the reference we created, either we got it from profile view or we got it from create item. On that reference, we say go ahead and post that data, right? Post that data to Firebase. We have the image data. Here we need image data. Either you have image data or you have a URL. We have a local image. We have no URL, we have a local image. So we take that local image, we convert it to data, we call it image data here. We pass in the metadata as well. The metadata has the content type in it. First, when we get back that completion handler, there could be an error there, something probably went wrong there. Maybe we have no permissions to write to storage. If not, we have metadata here. We use the photo reference. And the photo reference object at that point is going to have a download URL. On the download URL, we have a completion handler. If that image was able to be posted, if we come in the else block, that image did get posted. So on that photo reference, we now have a download URL. The download URL has a completion handler on itself as well. Do I have a URL or do I have an error? If I have an error, I send back to the view controller, there's an error, something went wrong. If not, we were successful, we were able to get a download URL, okay? And that download URL, one second, that download URL we have, we'll be able to take that download URL, attach it to our user object in Firebase, or attach it to our item model, right? Our item model, if we do not have an image URL property yet, we'll have to create one to add it to that item, right? So when we create the item, we'll go one of two ways. Either we create the item first, and then in the success block, we post the image. Once we posted the image, we'll get the download URL and update the item with that download URL, right? There's a lot of parts there, right? So our item needs a download URL. That way, when our table view renders, we have that image. Everybody with me? Everybody with me? Okay? It's actually good that we'll come back tomorrow on that because that's a lot there. But what I want us to go away with is know that at the end of the day, what we really want, we want our image to be posted to Firebase, and we also want that download URL. That download URL is that URL we see in any API we use, right? If Foursquare, for example, there's a venue, we want to have an image. Where's the image? That image is that download URL, right? That photo URL we see in a venue's API or whatever it is, we need that as well, right? So our item will have a photo URL. Our user has a photo URL already. That's what we associate to that user. Everybody with me? Okay, so we are good here. We could probably actually test this, not fully test this, but get close to testing it. We have our public function update. We have this, we have that. Okay, cool. Let us navigate to profile view controller. The good thing is we'll be doing this twice. We'll be doing it for profile view and also for create item. So there's two places we'll be seeing storage examples. So go to profile view controller. Profile view controller, I click on my update profile button pressed. I have my selected image down here. Great, okay. So for now, we'll probably refactor this tomorrow, but we just want to test this for now. We have our request. Are we all in the update profile button pressed? Okay, so here we're capturing a display name. That's fine. We're creating a request here because now the user wants to change the display name, for example. We commit changes. That's good. Right before display name here. Actually, let's force them to have an image. So right in our guard statement, right after the is empty here, right where on line 51, right after our is empty, do we all have an is empty here, checking to see if it's empty? Put a comma, and we'll say selected image. Well, let's selected image equal to selected image. Okay, so we have a selected image there. And at this point, if we get down to line 56, we have a selected image. Aha, now we need to resize. Okay, so here we'll put a comment. Resize image before uploading to Firebase. And again, we resize the image because we do not want to send a full resolution image up to Firebase, right? For storage purposes and also for app experience to the user, you don't want to have a full-size image. We also did it in Image Picker. We remember Image Picker? We also resize the image because the bigger the image or the bigger the dimension of an image, the more memory that image takes on your application. So here we have resized image equal to, what do we have here? UI image dot resize. UI image dot resize image. It needs an original image. We have one. It's called selected image. And for the rect is basically we want to give the image some size, right? For the size here, we could grab any UI element that we want to use as a size, or you could grab the entire device's size. But here we'll, again, try to keep it as small as possible, not too small. It's not a thumbnail image. So for the rect, we'll pass in profile image view that bounce. Okay? Again, this UI image dot resize image, this is an extension, the extension that we added to the project. Right? This is where that is coming from. Question? If you do not see resize image, that means you haven't added that extension that we slacked out. Right? The extension I'm talking about, if we go back here, command click, jump to extension. This is the extension. Make sure you have that in your project. I slacked it out. Build, command B. Command B, right? You type in UI image dot resize image. Anybody not see UI image dot resize image when they type in dot resize image? You have the file, you import it. There's no error on that particular extension that you have? Does it give you an error? Okay, good. All right, so at this point we have a resized image. At this point we do have a resized image. Everybody, yes? Does everybody have a resized image? Okay, let's navigate up to the top of the file and create a storage reference or a storage instance. Navigate up to the top of the file. We'll add it right below selected image. We'll say private let storage service equal to storage service. Can we do 10 minutes or no? Matt is shaking his head here. The what? So you guys want to stop here?
Can I just say that we have like 30 minutes till we leave and I haven't eaten lunch.
Okay.
That's why I want to stop.
All right. So we'll stop here. Before we stop here, let's just do a simple print statement. We'll do a simple print statement and we'll stop here, okay? So let's just print, make sure our resize image is working, and then we'll continue tomorrow. So here, original, image size, selected image, that's size, and here, print. Resized image size. Resized image. Okay. And I'll put some notes here for people that want to continue later. So the to-do we need to do here basically is call storage service dot upload, whatever it's called, upload storage service, upload. Pass in the resize image, completion here, result. Okay, and then code here to add the photo URL to the request to the users for the URL, to the users photo URL property, right? That's it. Then save, or then commit changes. That's what we need to do. Cool. So at this point, we could just run the app and make sure that our original image size is being resized correctly with the extension that we have, and then we'll stop here. So, but that's the to-do for people that want to continue with this. This is also part of the lab for the week, so you could continue this, but we'll continue here tomorrow. Everybody with me?
Yes.
Okay, so run the app. Run the app, go to profile, click on profile, photo library, get some photo, click on the photo, and for our resize, oh, I didn't click on, sorry. We need to click on update profile. Well, I wasn't expecting that. One second, what's nil here? Photo reference, crap. Photo reference is nil. Oh, yes, we never pass in the user ID. Okay, good. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow with this. But there's one bug you could fix. Basically, we need to pass in either a user ID. Everybody, in our function, in our function here, we need to pass in either a user ID or an item ID. Everybody with me? Right? Right here. We need to update that function. You could pass in a user ID or do we have a user ID? So you need to pass in a user ID here. We're not passing a user ID. Everybody with me? Okay. So we'll continue here tomorrow. Awesome.